A 31-year-old man from Miami, Florida, has been arrested after murdering his wife and posting a picture of her body on Facebook.
This is the story of the Facebook killer and the moment violence, ego, and the internet collided with irreversible consequences. On the morning of August 8, 2013, something appeared on Facebook that would forever change how the world viewed crime in the age of social media. It wasn't a rumor or a vague status update. It wasn't a hacked account or a dark joke. It was a photograph, graphic, real, and horrifying. The image showed a young woman lying motionless on the floor of her own home. Blood surrounded her body. Her eyes were open, but empty. There was no mistaking what people were seeing. Above the photo was a message posted by her husband. "I'm going to prison or get the death sentence for killing my wife. Love you guys. Miss you guys. Take care." Within minutes, friends and family began seeing it. Some thought it had to be fake. Others felt instant panic. Phones started ringing. Messages flooded in. But before anyone could fully process what they were looking at, the truth became undeniable. The woman in the photograph was 26-year-old Jennifer Alfonso, and the man who posted it was her husband of nearly 4 years, 31-year-old Derek Medina. Before police even arrived at the scene, the crime had already gone viral. To the outside world, Derek and Jennifer's marriage appeared troubled but unremarkable. They were young, they struggled financially, they argued. Like many couples, their relationship wasn't perfect, but nothing about it suggested it would end in such a brutal way. Later, Derek would paint a very specific picture of their marriage. He claimed Jennifer had a history of substance abuse and had previously lost custody of her daughter. He described himself as the one who stayed, the one who helped her clean up her life, the one who tried to hold the marriage together. Whether that version was true, exaggerated, or carefully crafted would eventually become a key issue in court. But on that August morning, all that mattered was what happened inside their home. Derek told police he woke up around 9:30 a.m. Almost immediately, an argument began. Jennifer was angry, he said, because he hadn't woken her earlier in the night after they returned from a club. According to Derek, the disagreement escalated quickly. He said she hit him and continued to provoke him verbally. At some point during the argument, Derek went to the bedroom closet and retrieved his firearm. He told investigators he pointed the gun at Jennifer as a warning. Jennifer wasn't afraid. He claimed she laughed, mocked him, told him he wouldn't do anything. Eventually, Derek said he put the gun away and tried to go back to sleep. Jennifer moved between rooms, continuing to shout, throw things, and escalate the conflict. The argument didn't end upstairs, it followed them downstairs into the kitchen. This was the moment Derek would later describe as life or death. He told detectives that when he went back downstairs, Jennifer was holding a knife. He claimed she threatened to kill him. He said he grabbed the knife from her hand and placed it back into a drawer. At that point, according to his own statement, she was no longer armed. But Derek claimed she continued attacking him anyway, punching him repeatedly, aiming for his chest, his neck, and his temple. He described her as relentless, saying he believed his life was in danger. Medical examiners would later determine that the injuries were fatal. The sheer number of bullets would become one of the most damaging elements of Derek's self-defense claim. Jennifer collapsed onto the kitchen floor. Derek's 10-year-old stepdaughter was still in the house. Instead of calling 911, instead of trying to render aid, instead of screaming for help, Derek placed the gun away. He went upstairs and calmly told the child not to come downstairs. He closed the door to protect her from what she was about to see. Then he went back into the kitchen. He took out his phone, and he took a photograph of Jennifer's lifeless body. Later, Derek would say he did this so her family could be notified quickly and come get his stepdaughter. But instead of calling emergency services, he opened Facebook. He uploaded the image, and he wrote the post that would make him infamous across the world. After posting the photo, Derek locked the door and left the house. He went to a relative's home and told them he had killed his wife. He asked to say goodbye to family members before surrendering to police. Eventually, his father drove him to the police station. When Derek arrived, he didn't resist. He didn't deny what he had done. He walked in and told officers plainly, "I just killed my wife. It was self-defense." Inside the interrogation room, Derek appeared calm, almost casual. He waived his right to an attorney and agreed to speak freely. He answered questions in detail, recounting the argument step by step. But as detectives listened, cracks in his story began to show. Jennifer had left the room earlier, giving him the opportunity to walk away. She was unarmed when he fired. He emptied nearly an entire magazine into her body. He never called 911. And instead of seeking help, he documented the scene and shared it online. Self-defense requires an immediate and unavoidable threat. What investigators heard sounded less like panic and more like control. And this was only the beginning of what the evidence would reveal. As detectives continued questioning Derek Medina, the calm tone he maintained only deepened their concern. He spoke quickly, confidently, often correcting himself, but never breaking emotionally. He insisted again and again that he had no intention of killing Jennifer. According to him, everything that happened was forced upon him: the argument, the violence, the shooting. But investigators weren't just listening to his words. They were measuring them against facts. One of the most damaging details came from Derek himself. After Jennifer collapsed, he admitted she was no longer a threat. Yet he never called for help, not for an ambulance, not for police, not even after the danger, as he described it, was over. Instead, he went upstairs, warned his stepdaughter not to come down, and returned to the kitchen to document the scene. This decision would haunt his defense, because in cases of legitimate self-defense, panic usually follows: shock, fear, attempts to save life, calls for help. What detectives saw instead was deliberation. During the interrogation, Derek described Jennifer continuing to lunge, even after being shot, claiming she kept swinging at him. But medical evidence would later show that several bullets struck vital areas, making sustained movement extremely unlikely. He also claimed she had aimed punches at his temple and throat, areas he said could have killed him. Yet when police examined him, the injuries were minimal: bruising on the arm and chest, no fractures, no life-threatening wounds. Then came another key detail. Derek revealed he was a trained amateur boxer, undefeated, with years of experience. This mattered. Prosecutors would later argue that someone with that level of physical training would be capable of defending himself or escaping without resorting to lethal force, especially against an unarmed opponent. The kitchen layout also worked against him. Investigators noted that Derek had been standing closer to the hallway and front exit, meaning he had a clear path to leave the house. He wasn't cornered, he wasn't trapped, and yet he chose to fire, 6 to 8 times. Every round struck Jennifer's body. When detectives asked why he didn't flee instead of shooting, Derek struggled to explain. He repeated that he had handled it on his own for years, and believed involving police would only make things worse. That answer raised another red flag. Derek claimed Jennifer had been abusive for the entirety of their marriage, 4 years of physical and emotional violence. But when asked if he had ever called police before, taken photographs, filed reports, or sought help, his answer was no, not once. There was no documented history of domestic violence against Jennifer, no restraining orders, no police calls, no medical records, and yet Derek insisted he had endured years of abuse silently. Then detectives showed him the photograph, the same one he had uploaded to Facebook. They asked him to confirm that it was Jennifer, that it was her body, that he had taken the photo, that he had posted it himself. He confirmed all of it, and then they asked him to read the caption out loud: "I'm going to prison or death sentence for killing my wife. You will see me in the news." There was no hesitation in his voice, no regret, no sign that the reality of what he had done had truly set in. From an investigative standpoint, the Facebook post wasn't just disturbing, it was incriminating. It demonstrated awareness, finality, and expectation of punishment. He wasn't claiming an accident, he wasn't asking for help, he was announcing a conclusion. Prosecutors would later argue that this wasn't the behavior of someone who had just barely survived a violent attack. It was the behavior of someone who believed the outcome was inevitable. When the case moved forward, Derek was charged with first-degree murder, along with weapons charges and neglect, since a child had been present in the home during the shooting. His defense centered entirely on self-defense. They painted Jennifer as volatile, aggressive, unpredictable. They pointed to Derek's bruises. They argued that domestic abuse against men is often dismissed and goes unreported. But the prosecution dismantled that narrative piece by piece. They emphasized the number of shots fired, the fact that Jennifer had left the room earlier, the opportunity Derek had to escape, the lack of immediate danger at the time of the shooting, and most importantly, his actions afterward: taking a photo, posting it online, leaving the scene without calling for help. Jurors were shown the Facebook image. The courtroom fell silent. That single photograph carried more weight than hours of testimony. It wasn't just evidence of a crime, it was evidence of mindset. The prosecution argued that Derek didn't act in fear. He acted in anger, and when the moment passed, he didn't panic, he performed. The trial revealed another uncomfortable truth. Social media had become part of the crime itself. This wasn't just a murder followed by a confession. It was a public display, broadcast before law enforcement even arrived. By the time police secured the scene, thousands of people had already seen Jennifer's body. Her death wasn't private, it was permanent, and it was public. As the jury deliberated, the question wasn't whether Derek had killed his wife. He admitted that himself. The question was whether the law could justify it. And after reviewing the evidence, listening to the interrogation, and seeing the photograph that shocked the world, the answer became clear. This wasn't self-defense, it was murder, and the sentence would ensure Derek Medina would never again be able to post, explain, or justify what he had done. By the time the case reached sentencing, the story had already burned itself into public memory. The image, the caption, the casual certainty with which Derek Medina announced his future behind bars. But inside the courtroom, the focus shifted away from the internet spectacle and towards something far more. When closing arguments began, the defense returned to one central idea. Men can be victims of domestic abuse, and society often ignores it. The jury didn't disagree, but acknowledging that truth didn't require believing Derek's version of events. The prosecution made it clear. This case wasn't about denying male victimhood. It was about accountability, about choices made after danger had passed. The law doesn't excuse killing because a relationship was toxic. It doesn't excuse execution because arguments were frequent, and it certainly doesn't excuse publicizing death as proof of righteousness. After deliberation, the verdict came back: guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of weapons charges, guilty of neglect. The courtroom reaction was subdued. No cheers, no shock, just the quiet finality of consequence. During sentencing, Derek spoke again. He insisted the punishment was unfair. He said he felt misunderstood. He said he had acted to save his life. But the judge focused on Jennifer, on the permanence of her absence, on the violence of her final moments, on the child who would carry this memory forever. The sentence was life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years, 15 years for the weapons charge, 5 years for neglect. Consecutive. As deputies led Derek away, the story that once exploded across Facebook finally slowed to silence. No more posts, no more explanations, no more chances to reframe the narrative. The internet remembered the photo, but the court remembered the facts, and in the end, the truth stood heavier than any caption ever could. The final chapter of this case is not loud. It doesn't come with flashing lights, viral posts, or breaking news banners. It comes quietly, in the long echo of what was lost. Jennifer Alfonso was reduced in public memory to a photograph taken in death, but before that moment she was a daughter, a mother, a woman trying to rebuild a life that had already been complicated long before the morning she died. And that is the cruelest outcome of this case. The crime didn't just take her life, it erased her voice. In the months after Derek Medina was sentenced, the world moved on. The Facebook post faded from timelines, new stories replaced it, new horrors demanded attention, but for the people who loved Jennifer, there was no moving on. Her family never got a goodbye, her child never got answers, and the internet never forgot the image Derek chose to leave behind. What makes this case so disturbing isn't just the violence, it's the way it blurred the line between crime and performance. For the first time on a global scale, a murder confession wasn't whispered to police or written in a letter. It was uploaded, framed, published. The crime scene became content, and that forced society to confront an uncomfortable reality. When violence is shared online, it doesn't just shock, it spreads. Jennifer's death was no longer confined to a courtroom or a police report. It lived on screens. It followed strangers into their homes. It became something people scrolled past between memes and messages. That permanence is something no sentence can undo. Derek Medina still maintains that he was wronged by the system. He has continued to argue that his actions were justified, that his sentence is excessive, that he was misunderstood. But the law isn't designed to validate feelings. It exists to evaluate actions, and his actions told a story far clearer than his words ever could. He chose to arm himself. He chose to follow instead of flee. He chose to fire until the gun was empty. He chose to document death instead of prevent it. Each choice narrowed the path forward until only one outcome remained. Life in prison, not as revenge, not as spectacle, but as consequence. This case also left behind a warning, one that goes beyond domestic violence, beyond firearms, beyond social media. It's a reminder that control often disguises itself as justification. Derek framed himself as a victim, a protector, a man pushed too far. But when control enters the picture, when someone decides how a story will be told, when they decide who gets to speak and who doesn't, the truth begins to surface. Self-defense is about survival. This wasn't survival. It was finality. The courtroom doors eventually closed. The cameras stopped rolling. Derek was taken to a cell where time would stretch endlessly, measured not in likes or comments but in years. Jennifer's life, meanwhile, would remain frozen at the moment someone else decided it should end. And that is why this case still matters. Not because of its shock value, not because of the photo, not because of the headline. It matters because it forces us to ask hard questions about violence, accountability, and the dangerous power of narratives told by the ones who survive their own actions. The internet gave Derek a platform. The court gave Jennifer justice. And the difference between those two outcomes is everything. If this story made you think, pause, or reflect, support this kind of storytelling. Like the video, share it with others, and subscribe for more true crime stories told with depth, clarity, and respect.